Fantastic performance there from the students from the Pierre Boulez Saal Academy. And just a word, a bit of background about this academy. It was set up by Daniel Barenboim, the conductor, who set it up together with the late literary theorist Edward Said. And today happens to be Daniel Barenboim's birthday, 80th birthday, so I suppose we all would wish him a warm and best of happy birthdays. The students we just saw perform there: Rafaela Carvalho, Estelle Akhtar, Lourdes Hadwe, Ibrahim Al-Sheikh, Huma Beza Unal, Nur Kosh, Yingve Abelvik, Kandil. We'll hear more from them as the program goes on. But when this academy was set together, it brings together students from across Israel, Palestine, North Africa, and other parts of the Middle East, with the conviction that music can bring people together. We can listen to each other. And on that basis is why it sets a good tone for what we're doing here today, for this ceremony. And with that, I would like to also thank the Academy for granting us this gorgeous venue. Looking all around us, it's cozy. There's, 600 of us in here? 130 nationalities represented here today. Something to celebrate. But also importantly is also to thank our host country, the grander host here, the Federal Republic of Germany. And with that, I would like to invite to the stage the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Germany, Madam Annalena Baerbock.
Colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf also of the German Justice Minister Marco Buschmann and myself, I would like to welcome you not only in Berlin, but as our fabulous moderator has already underlined, in this gorgeous venue, which we didn't pick by coincidence, but really by purpose. Because this house, this music also reflects why we are here today, to celebrate life. As of today, more than 50 states still execute the death penalty. Among those states are countries from north to south, from east to west. Small countries, large countries, democracies, dictatorships. We see with great concern how authoritarian regimes use the death penalty to repress political opponents more and more. They are not executing the death penalty for severe crimes or murder committed, but simply because people express their feelings or whom they love, or they express their opinion or celebrate freedom and life, for example, with music and dancing. Belarus this year expanded the list of crimes punishable with the death penalty to threaten the opposition in the country. Iran is executing hundreds of people every year, according to Amnesty International, including LGBTIQ persons, because of the reasons for whom they love. This weekend we received reports that the regime has issued a first death sentence against a person who took part in the protest after the death of Mahsa Amini, who just wished to live in freedom as many others. And the regime is threatening many more protesters with the death penalty. We have left no doubt about what we think about the regime's brutal repression against its own people, and that is why yesterday, as EU foreign ministers, we put in place further targeted sanctions against those in Tehran who are responsible. China, for its part, does not publish official numbers on executions. However, human rights organizations estimate that there are thousands of executions every year, more than in all other countries still using the death penalty taken together. As brutal as all this is, fortunately, the countries who still execute their own citizens are a shrinking minority. Almost 100 states have abolished the death penalty in the course of the last 50 years. More and more states are abolishing it recently. Sierra Leone did so last year. Minister Taravali, I applaud you on this courageous move. I also applaud Liberia and Zambia for embarking on the path of abolition with respective laws in parliament. And I'm very delighted that Minister Kemaya of Liberia and Minister Haimbe of Zambia are with us today to report about these important steps for your countries. The progress the world has made towards ending capital punishment was, however, no natural outcome of history. It needs political leadership and often determination. We owe this progress to the work of so many activists, attorneys, artists, journalists, and parliamentarians who have championed this cause with great courage. There's one NGO in particular that has pioneered this message around the globe. Ensemble contre la peine de mort, the organizers of this Congress. Dear Aminata Niakati, dear Raphael Chenoui Hassan, thank you for your dedication, your courage, and the excellent collaboration. Thank you very much. You all in this room know that abolishing the death penalty is more than difficult. We see that in the variety of countries which still use it, from Indonesia to Japan, from India to parts of the United States. Public opinion often supports capital punishment. And we all understand the pain of women and men who have been victims to horrific crimes we hardly can imagine, of mothers or fathers whose children have been brutally murdered, raped, or abused. We understand how much they wish for the guilty to be punished. Therefore, it's difficult to mobilize parliamentary majorities against it. And I want to state it very clearly, and I think we all share this. There's no question that severe crimes require severe punishment. But no matter how horrible a crime, no matter how deep the pain, we must not pay like with like. We must not take life for life. This is an understanding of humanities, because that goes against our firm belief in the very dignity of life. It goes against the core values we believe in, the values that unite us here today in all our wonderful diversity. The European Convention on Human Rights and its 13th protocol, the protocol of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the abolition of the death penalty, and the protocol of the American Convention on Human Rights to abolish the death penalty. Capital punishment goes against the very belief in reason and in human dignity that our societies are built upon, whether we hail from Europe, Africa, Asia, or Latin America. Moreover, the death penalty is ineffective in deterring crime, as research and statistics show. The death penalty reflects inequality and discrimination because it affects minorities, the marginalized and the poor more than others. And the death penalty is irreversible. While all justice systems make mistakes, a life wrongfully taken is gone forever. Still, we know that the abolition is a very sensitive issue. It deeply affects countries' national policies and their judicial system. That is why we are coming together here, not to lecture, but to listen and to learn from each other. Learn from journalists reporting on executions, to show audiences favoring the death penalty how cruel it is to kill a person with lethal injection, and what it does to those administrating it. Learn from politicians using step-by-step approaches to move forward an abolition, from reducing the number of crimes punishable with the death penalty to imposing a moratoria on executions. And learn from civil society activists how to best run a campaign for abolition. By lobbying parliamentarians, by organizing role plays at schools, by collecting testimonies from individuals who have spent decades on the death row for a crime they did not commit. We need these discussions. We need this Congress and the dedication of all of you. We need it for one simple reason: to move forward towards a globally outlawing capital punishment, to walk ahead together on the path of humanity. Thank you.
Madam Minister Annalena Baerbock, Mr. Ministers Marco Buschmann, dear ministers and excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear abolitionist friends. I'm so happy, so glad to see so many friendly faces here in this beautiful room. Is there a more beautiful setting to carry the voices of abolitionists around the world than this magical place? I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart the Pierre Boulez Saal, the Daniel Barenboim Edouard Said Academy, its students, and the foundation. Thank you for them. Mozart said that the most necessary, the most difficult, and even the most essential thing in music is tempo. It is precisely the ambition of the World Congress Against the Death Penalty to be every 3 years this tempo that sets in motion the universal abolition. Mozart again added that in order to succeed in a work, it is necessary to put together notes that love each other. During these 4 days, you will experience the fervor of abolition, understand the complexity behind the fact that remains stubborn, and perhaps feel the extraordinary solidarity and love within the great abolitionist family. Because yes, we are a united family, and perhaps that is why our cause is advancing with such success in the universal conscientiousness. We are so proud to welcome you in the name of ECPM, Together Against Death Penalty, in the name of the world abolitionist movement, in the name of all our partners, and in particular Germany, our host, as well as our co-sponsors, the European Union, France, Switzerland, and all our political and financial partners. That said, I dream of the day when we will stop meeting every 3 years. And this day is getting closer year after year. You may say that I'm perhaps an eternal optimist, that there are still many countries to be convinced among the most reluctant to the abolitionist idea, many battles to fight, and many victories to be won. Winston Churchill rightly said that a pessimist sees a difficulty in every opportunity, while an optimist, like me, sees the opportunity in every difficulty. The first opportunity, or for some difficulty, remains that nothing is more political than the death penalty. It is the ultimate expression of tyranny and the power of life or death on its own people. But it is precisely what makes it an opportunity, because abolition is in the hands of politicians, and it is a result of the extraordinary courage and leadership of some of them. Today, beyond speeches, we are all waiting for significant progresses, and you are going to get it today. Many ministers from the African continent have responded to our call, and I thank them. We are convinced that Africa will be the next abolitionist continent. Another continent, another country, another situation. I would like to express regret here before you. Indeed, 2 years after Joe Biden's election, nothing has really been done on the subject of abolition by his administration. We ask that President Biden honors his commitments by abolishing the death penalty at the federal level and by commuting all death sentences in the US, as an extraordinary example. Finally, today, dictatorships and totalitarian states around the world are the most fervent defenders of the death penalty. It is imposed in the shadow of the gallows, in shame and opprobrium. The day of the pride of the executioner, who killed in public as a message to the crowd, to the public opinion, are long gone. We demand absolute and necessary transparency on the sentences, executions, and conditions of detentions on death row. When the youth of Iran rise up, when war rages in Europe, when injustice continues in Afghanistan, Belarus, and elsewhere, when China seals up the system to the point of total opacity, it is all the more urgent to come together. This is exactly what we are doing here today at the 8th World Congress Against Death Penalty. And we are firmly focused on young people and a new generation ready to commit to defending our rights and our values. Great ideals are not recommended by testament, but by the permanence of the effort, the transmission, and the appropriation of the new generations. It is all together, young and old, that we must build the abolition of tomorrow. The Greek orator Demosthenes said at the top of the Parthenon, "Rise up, beautiful youth of Athens, and take up the torch of the past glories." It is in this spirit that I would like to engage the world's youth toward universal abolition. We rely on you now to take that torch, and you are the beating heart of abolition. So let us fight together against the death penalty. Thank you very much.
Madame la ministre Annalena Backhaus.
Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Baerbock, dear friends, as President of EPCM, I'd like to welcome you here very warmly. And I would like to say thank you very warmly to all our team here, all the organizers, all the volunteers, and all those who are supporting us and who have been supporting us for months now. Thank you. So this agenda is very special this year. It's our 8th anniversary, and it's between the pre-vote of a moratorium for a ban of the death penalty and the definite vote. And last November, this resolution was voted by 126 states, and 27 were against it. And since 2007, it was the first resolution, and we can go even further. And it is my privilege to lead the campaign in favor of this resolution, and I count on you, all the ambassadors and ministers, to support this very important tool for the abolition of death penalty. As EPCM, we have just been our 20th birthday, and we do our very best. We have been doing our best for many years. 3 aboltionist states in the last year, among others the Central African Republic. For this Congress, we count on the youngsters with so many hope and innovative ideas, and I am convinced we are going towards a society of abolitionists, and we have to learn so many things from young people who are mobilizing in Iran and who are so brave and so courageous because of the death of young Masha Darin, a student. Young people are always in first line in their fight against the death penalty. For example, Samania Yazin, who is only 27 years old and who is a musician. And this is really impossible to punish people this severely just for being musicians. And others were tortured without real process, without any real proceedings. And I would really ask you to do everything possible in your powers to support women, life, liberty in Iran. Thanks to Berlin to host this Congress. I wish you well for your work, and this is going to be just a new module towards the abolition of death penalty. Thank you very much. Merci et bienvenue à tous et à toutes au 8e congrès mondial contre la peine de la mort.
Zum nächsten Panel.
aura un peu de mouvement car certains de nos délégués vont nous quitter pour quelques instants. Ils vont revenir. Hier, il y avait la plaidoirie qui était accompagnée par des débats politiques, la plaidoirie bilatérale, et on ne va pas hésiter à reconnaître toutes ces diverses délégations de la société civile d'une multitude de pays. Et merci à tous. Je suis Tommy Orlade. Je vais vous guider à travers la cérémonie d'aujourd'hui. Et on va donc commencer.
Who we'll be hearing from, and then I'll tell you what we'll be discussing. So first of all, I'd like to invite Monsieur Eric Dupond-Moretti. He is the Justice Minister of France. Please come forward. Mr. D. Maxwell Sa Kemaya, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Liberia. Mr. Mulambo Haimbe, Minister of Justice from Zambia. And Mr. Mohamed Lamin Tarawale, Minister of Justice from Sierra Leone. Welcome. So what we'll be doing, this panel will focus on the next big commitments towards abolition of the death penalty in non-abolition states, and also on the process of abolition. And just as we go forward, as we speak, I would request our speakers not to do much in terms of introduction and thanking everybody. We appreciate everybody, so accept our thanks in advance, and then we will just get straight into it because of time. So I would like to begin with the Honourable Minister to my left, Monsieur Eric Dupond-Moretti from France. You are the Keeper of the Seals, the Minister of Justice from France. France is actually one of the co-sponsors of this Congress, this World Congress Against the Death Penalty. Now, on the 9th of October 2021, on the 40th anniversary of France's abolition, the President, Emmanuel Macron, committed to relaunching the fight for universal abolition. So, as co-sponsor of this World Congress, what is France's role, particularly working with other countries towards speeding up or moving forward the abolition process?
Merci.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say that it's difficult to find the right words to express the honor and how proud I am to be here as a Minister of Justice for this 80th Congress against the death penalty. France abolished this death penalty 40 years ago, and I believe, and we believe, that justice can't be translated into death penalty. And it's essential to abolish death penalty. In our different organizations, international organizations, we do not stop to stress how important the abolition is. And I'm convinced that peace, we know it, democracy, the rule of law, these are permanent fights, and that's true for death penalty also. As for the United Nations, France is very active in this body when it comes to death penalty and its abolition. And we support all states in order to adopt the resolution against this punishment. Of course, France takes part in this fight, and that's a very strong idea. Justice and death penalty can't go together, and we are very proud to celebrate our 40 years of abolition. And we are convinced that of the importance of public opinion. We have to be brave, and we need to go towards abolition. And all of us here are convinced that we have to carry on this fight, and that ideally we wouldn't have to reunite anymore. Thank you very much.
I will just go to your left. To the Minister, the Honourable Minister from Liberia, Mr. D. Maxwell Sa-Kemaya. Liberia has two important developments in favor of abolition to announce. There's a bill that has scaled through the Senate. I believe it's before the House of Representatives, the lower house, at the moment, but we've heard that there are other commitments as well underway. Don't worry, the microphone will come on. Could you confirm this news to us and also tell us about other steps that are ongoing in Liberia towards abolition?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me know in the interest of time, but convey greetings and best wishes from our leader, His Excellency President Dr. Weah. As a government, Liberia, under the astute leadership of His Excellency President Dr. Weah, remains very much committed in taking concrete and genuine steps aimed at abolishing death penalty and other capital punishments, while at the same time continuing to steadily put in place measures to continue to improve human rights as a whole, freedom of press, and the rule of law, with a strong emphasis on further promoting the democratic credentials of our country. We are pleased to inform this gathering that the process of abolishing death penalty in Liberia is grounded, solid, steady, and rapidly progressing with broader public support and commitment. And this is because our president, as former peace ambassador, His Excellency President Dr. Weah, has a special commitment not only to continue to promote and uphold the value and dignity of human beings, but to equally ensure that their continuing right to the life and existence in conformity to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, in light of that, we continue to push, and it is against that background that this year, 2022, a bill was submitted to the national legislature of our country, the legislature, our parliament, to abolish death penalty. And we are very much pleased that in July of this year, the House of Representatives passed the bill for abolishing, the House of Senate, the Senate passed a bill to abolish death penalty. And that bill is currently before the House of Representatives for passage or for concurrence. And we are of the strongest conviction that that bill will be passed by the House of Representatives, and from there it will go to our executive mansion, where the President of the Republic of Liberia, I can confirm, will sign that into law to abolish death penalty. But how? Liberia, before our late President William R. Tubman, then became popular using death by hanging. But when the coup in 1980 came in, the late Master Sergeant Samuel K. Doe changed from death by hanging to death by firing squad. And the last known death by firing squad was on April 8, 1985, when the late Lieutenant Colonel Moses M.D. Flazamiton was executed, the former Deputy Commanding Officer of our then Executive Marshal Guard Battalion. And from that point on, also to our civil crisis, that has been used. There was extrajudicial killings during the civil crisis. But since the end of the civil crisis, through a de facto moratorium, Liberia for more than 22 years, there has been no death, executed, whether by hanging or firing squad. So death penalty, we can say, through a de facto moratorium, has been in existence in the Republic of Liberia. But we remain committed to making sure. And let me state that we are pleased that last week, to be precise, on Friday, November 11, at the United Nations in the Third Committee, Liberia voted in favor of abolishing death penalty. And we want to commit here that we expect that resolution that was passed in the Third Committee to come in the General Assembly, and Liberia can commit here that we will also resoundingly vote in favor of abolishing death penalty. The right to life, we think, cannot be questioned, and it is important that all of us continue to do that, and we look forward to Liberia being a part of the abolitionist community. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And important steps right there, but moving it to another part of the continent, to Zambia rather. Minister Mulambo Haimbe, Zambia, the President of Zambia, His Excellency Hakainde Hichilema, has pledged to work with Parliament to start this abolition process. What are the next steps from what you know?
Thank you very much, and may I say good morning to all the delegates here. That question is a very apt question. I like the earlier statements that were given when opening this conference, that Africa is the focus in the process of abolition. And we as Zambia are proud to be walking that talk, to be the next abolitionist country. As you've rightly pointed out, a policy position was taken by our President, His Excellency the President, Mr. Hichilema, at the highest level regarding the death penalty and its continued subsistence on our statute books. And without any taking any prisoners, as it were, His Excellency was very clear that we, as a New Dawn government, as we call ourselves, are committed to abolishing the death penalty. We were elected into office just about over a year ago, and so we are keen to make sure that we bring a difference, to bring hope for the continent, to be a beacon of light on the continent regarding matters to do with the rule of law generally, and in particular the death penalty. Our successive constitutions in the Republic have recognized the right to life. If you allow me to quote very quickly, Article 12 of the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia, as amended currently, reads as follows: "A person shall not be deprived of his life intentionally, except in execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense under the law in force in Zambia, of which he has been convicted." What does this mean? It means effectively the death penalty can be currently pending legislative reform. The death penalty can be effected by law. Now, the law that gives effect to the death penalty is contained in our Criminal Procedure Code and the Penal Code. And broadly speaking, those pieces of legislation provide as follows: that there will be a death penalty by hanging. For impact, allow me to read the particular provision. When any person is sentenced to death, the sentence shall direct, that he shall be hanged by the neck until pronounced dead. So that is the gravity of our current provisions. What we have done, however, is to remove or propose to remove the provision in the law that provides for the death penalty. Whilst it has been argued that it's required that the Constitution be amended, the process of amending the Constitution takes time and is a lengthy process. Whereas for legislative changes, one can do so on the floor of the House with a simple majority. And so we took the direction of introducing bills before the floor of the House. Ours is a single chamber, it's a unitary parliament, in which we have proposed the repeal of the provisions that provide for the death sentence in the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. In effect, that entails that the right to life, that is enshrined in the Constitution will remain, because there will be no provisions in the legislation that will allow for a court of law to sentence one to death. So effectively, that would mean that the death penalty would be abolished. We have had a moratorium as well for the last 25 years, so we are a de facto abolitionist state, but it is not sufficient to simply be a de facto state. We want to put the black letter law in the right position so that no successive government will be able to execute on the basis of the provisions of the law. The question, therefore, right now is where we are with this particular process. In order to show our commitment, like I earlier indicated, we have introduced a bill on the floor of the House. Ours is a process that requires 3 readings of a particular bill. So it's gone through the first reading. It's going through the committee stage, where the general public will be able to comment on whether or not they support the particular bill. And then it will be debated on the floor of the House in this current session, which ends in December of this year. We are confident that at the end of that process, after the second reading and third reading, the bill will receive presidential assent, and with effect from December of this year, Zambia will no longer have the death penalty on its statute books. Thank you. Aside from that, we of course are aware and alive to the fact that we cannot look at the death penalty and abolition without looking at the plight of the victims. And so in that regard, we would be happy during this Congress to learn best practice from other abolitionist states, from France, for example, that has had 40 years of having abolished the death penalty. how the victims' interests will best be taken care of, how we can sensitize the public to the importance of taking care of the victims when the death penalty is finally abolished. And of course, in what ways we can improve our law enforcement agencies and their capability to prevent, as much as possible, crimes that would ordinarily attract the death penalty. With those few words, I'd like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. So 2 significant steps that we've heard there from the 2 nations, from Liberia, from Zambia as well. And this is significant. There's the hope as well, you know, that Zambia will support the moratorium resolution because Zambia did abstain at the UN General Assembly just last Friday. So we'll see. We'll see. Back to West Africa. Mr. Mohamed Lamine Tarawale from Sierra Leone. Now, Sierra Leone has already abolished the death penalty, did so last year. And so congratulations to Sierra Leone for that huge step. And for your support for the UN General Assembly resolution on the moratorium on the use of the death penalty. The next step, though, is on the ratification of the second optional protocol, the OP2, to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Only 16 African countries have ratified the OP2. How would Sierra Leone go about this next step?
Thank you very much, Hanem. I say thank you to the organizers, and I bring you greetings from the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and the people of Sierra Leone. On behalf of the President, we appreciate the congratulatory message on us abolishing the death penalty. That was a very bold step, and it's a very grave political decision to abolish the death penalty. Because over 30 years since we attained independence, no government has ever ventured in doing that. But for the presidency of Dr. Julius Maada Bio, he was very, very bold whilst he was campaigning that that will be among his priorities to abolish the death penalty. Not only that, we have taken before the Universal Periodic Review, before they could even table the decision in the United Nations for it to be contemplated upon, we have already abolished the death penalty. Ratification, we've gone ahead to abolish before even thinking of abolishing it. Because for us, as a country, this is the time we don't want to be recognized by our past. If you watch the news, listen to most people around the world, they always try to describe Sierra Leone, firstly as a country of civil war, which was a menace. They describe us as a country of Ebola, which was a menace, either of mudslide or whatever. We are a nation, we are a citizen of the world. Had it not been for those catastrophes, we would have gone way ahead. So we want to rewrite our past, not by any compulsion or by any force of any individual. For us, we think as a nation, every individual has a right to life. In as much as our constitution makes provision for that, we almost share the same plight with the Zambian. But yet, we thought that it is of most decent urgency to put an end to such. Going forward, the next step is to ratify, and that it is in the process to ratify the convention. But that notwithstanding, I will tell this august body that the government of President Bio and this present government, currently there is no political prisoners in any of our cells or jail, because we believe in creating a political space. Every individual must participate. And there is no individual, no journalist is in jail for expressing his or her opinion, you can write whatever you want to write and say whatever you want to say. Because if we created the space for any individual to participate, it gives the government the latitude to know where the weaknesses are and to develop the nation all the more. So it is an inclusive government that everybody must participate. So the political space, the civic rights of every individual in my country is very much entertained. We've gone ahead, apart from the abolition of the Seditious Libel Act, which at the time the government wanted to do that, a lot of commentators around the world were questioning, advising the government not to do that, because for them, they believe by keeping those repressive laws, you keep your opponents in subjection. But we don't believe, the government don't believe in that. The president doesn't believe in that. By keeping the death penalty, you put your opponents in continuous subjection. Let them fear of what to say or what to do. It is not our mantra. We don't believe in that. After the abolishment, immediately all those on death row were commuted to life. From that period, as we speak now, there is no individual, despite the atrocity of your act, there is no individual who has been convicted to death. Rather, you will be sent to life imprisonment. And even the life imprisonment, there is a time frame for the life imprisonment. For us, for now, life does not mean life. Life is at most 25 years, apart from the computation of the Prisons Act. But yes, life is 25 years imprisonment. It does not mean when they say life, you die in prisons. And there is also a provision and a policy which the government is working towards to compensate and to appease the victims. Because most victims believe that when an individual commits an act, atrocious capital offenses, the person must pay by life. The person's life must be taken away by death. But however, we are saying we don't encourage any individual to kill any person. But in an event that happens, it is the duty of the government and the state to make amends by ensuring that we bring everybody together and live as a Sierra Leonean, as a peaceful citizen. So the drive and the willingness is political will, and our government is 100% committed to ensure that everybody participates and the podium is created, that nobody has any fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've heard there two official announcements, two significant steps from Liberia and Zambia, and a powerful example, as was mentioned, a beacon of light from Sierra Leone. And just turning to the occasion, turning to this event, I'd just like to turn to everybody. When you hear the word youth, just one word that comes to mind when you hear the word youth? Anybody? Energy? Future. Power. Hope. Capable. New generation. Lovely. Sorry? Change? Oh, sorry, change. Super. So there's lots associated with youth, right? And as you know, the main focus of this 8th World Congress against the death penalty is the youth mobilization, right? And so, looking at all these words we've talked about, energy, hope, change, that is what will carry this movement. That's the fresh air, to be able to talk about this, but also to rally other young people, right? And so, for the first time, 6 incredible initiatives around the world, from Texas in the US, to Kenya, to DRC, Morocco, Lebanon, and Indonesia have been organized. And so, with that, I would request that we turn to our screens and there will be something for us to watch just to follow what exactly has been going on in this movement. And I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists for your words, including the Minister from France as well. Thank you all very much. You may return to your seats.
I have an execution sentence. I need you to sign this sentence.
Monsieur le juge, la peine capitale ne poursuit qu'un seul but, c'est supprimer une vie.
Today is the execution day.
What we need to do together, it's extremely challenging. We need in 2 days to be a group and find great ideas to make abolition happening. Oh, very easy.
Ce projet a démarré au Maroc, puis il a eu lieu en République démocratique du Congo.
This project started in Morocco, Tunisia, Texas, Indonesia, and other countries. And we are the young generation, lots of energy. We can learn from other people who have been active in this field.
November 22nd, when I was plucked from freedom. You wake up every day, you only see the walls. You know you're going to die, definitely.
L'attente de la mort, c'est une torture à chaque instant.
أنا اليوم حملتكم قصة أنطوانيت ومثل ما قلت هي مثل في كتير قصص أكتر.
Because I know there's innocent people in prison that shouldn't be there, and they need our help.
Yes, people deserve to be punished, but the punishment should be rehabilitative.
أنتوا الشباب بكرة إلكم. بكرة الحلو يلي كلنا بنحلم فيه. لبنان الحلو اللي بنحلم فيه.
Les méthodes que nous utilisons dans ces ateliers sont influencées par l'éducation non formelle. Donc il y a beaucoup d'exercices non verbaux, issus parfois du théâtre ou d'autres formes aussi créatives de travail avec les groupes. Et puis le second jour, souvent, le groupe a exploré une forme artistique qui était soit du théâtre, soit par exemple le théâtre d'ombre pour l'Indonésie. Et à partir de ça, décrit des scènes de la vie quotidienne, des dialogues.
On m'accuse d'avoir empoisonné mon mari.
My son was killed by a drunk person.
I've heard you are walking around with boys.
Monsieur le juge, chacun a le droit à la vie. Et la loi protège ce droit.
Ça leur permet en fait de comprendre mieux le contexte dans lequel ils se situent et d'aborder la peine de mort et l'abolition à différents niveaux, le niveau émotionnel et le niveau argumentatif et plus intellectuel.
So now we are at this very difficult stage to connect everything. Yeah? You already did a lot of work when we think about the open ideas, spontaneous ideas you had, the scene you developed in the theatre plays, and then the 48 ideas, now you have 4, and then it has to become one main action for the next 6 months.
À la fin, il y a une méthode très concrète où ils doivent en 3 dimensions faire fusionner leurs idées. Et la dernière étape, c'est en tant que groupe de choisir de 3 ou 4 dernières idées, celles qu'ils ont envie de développer pour la suite.
C'est un projet qui est focalisé sur les réseaux sociaux.
Welcome to the Abolition Media Tour.
On aimerait bien rencontrer des anciens condamnés à mort afin de partager leur histoire avec les autres.
Je suis absolument convaincue que dans les 6 pays où on a travaillé, que ces jeunes, qui sont incroyables, qui ont une force incroyable, qui ont redonné confiance et de l'espoir dans tous les activistes des générations un peu plus âgées, par leur créativité, leur façon d'être, qu'ils vont réussir à ce que l'abolition, enfin, soit vraiment inscrite dans des textes et qu'elle soit proclamée dans tous ces pays. J'en suis convaincue, absolument.
See that properly, but I believe you get the message. And we've got some of the youth representatives here. I would invite them to the front to further reiterate that message. They'll have some very short words for us, so welcome to the stage. So it's going to be very quick. It's okay, you don't need to sit. It's okay, we can stand together. I will give you 30 seconds each. It's going to be very quick. So it will be, what's the word? Popcorn? You'll pass the mic.
Hello, my name is Miranda from the Texas delegation, and we call upon our Texas leaders to end the death penalty in Texas due to the fact that it's anti-poor and racist pre-colonial practices, and we believe that it's a violation of our human rights. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sukaina Mutawakkil. I'm 20 years old, and I'm spokesperson. I'm so sorry. I've always spokesperson of the young Moroccan delegation. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. We, young Moroccan abolitionists, believe in the word of Gandhi. Morocco must ratify the moratorium by the end of December 2022. We can't take this down. We can face those who believe that the death penalty is a solution. We can do it. We can convince the Moroccan society, my society, that the law of retaliation is not a solution. I'm Sukaina Mutawakkil, and I'm against death penalty. ما ضد عقوبة إعدام، ما بغيتهاش تكون في بلادي. And thank you so much, sir.
Hello. My name is Ali Mahmoud. I'm 32 years old and I'm from Lebanon. As my t-shirt says, it's abolition now, Lebanon. I'm part of the Lebanese delegation where they are sitting where I'm pointing right now. Thank you, guys. And today we ask our government to give more spaces for new generation of youth to take part of policy and decision making for us to move forward in our mission of abolishing death penalty. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Fanny, I'm 25 now. I represent the Indonesia delegation. I would like to say that on the UPR session cycle 4, there is 28 countries urge Indonesia to abolish death penalty. We are young people, don't want to implement the death penalty in human punishment. So for all social injustice, torture, and unfair trials behind the death penalty have not the adequate space in the mainstream discourse. So abolish death penalty now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Muthuri Kathure from the Kenyan delegation. Hello. Ours is a simple call to all the world leaders seated here today and those who left to ratify the second optional protocol to the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights and the moratoriums thereof. And just to conclude, on behalf of the whole abolitionist, young abolitionist, in my generation and that comes behind me, there are strong opponents of death penalty. Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you, Verity. Thank you, everybody. And with that, we will have a quick break. I would like everybody to be back in here by past. Yeah, past. And I believe that there's so much more for us to see and to talk about. We'll be back in here by past, and let's continue these conversations as the break goes on. Thank you. Excellent from the students from the Barenboim Said Academy playing Mozart's work, the Serenade for Winds. Thank you all for reconvening. Thank you all for your commitment to this cause. And we will continue the proceedings. We'll not forget that when we talk about the death penalty, there are actual persons, actual individuals, actual lives involved in this. Death penalty is still a reality. There are more than 30,000 people around the world on death row, and we need to listen to their voices. We'll now hear from, before we hear from Deborah Milker, I will just, somebody has asked about the hashtag for this event, and so if you're tweeting away or Instagramming away or whatever it is whatever your connection to the world, the hashtag is 8 Congress ECPM. So it's 8 the number, numéro 8 Congress ECPM. There's also a live stream as well on the ECPM's YouTube page. So I don't know, you could share it to people who are outside to keep in touch with what's going on. Okay, so I will now invite Deborah Milker to the stage. You might have seen her in the earlier video that was played. She spent 22 years on Arizona's death row for a crime she did not commit. Let's invite Deborah.
Thank you, thank you. As it was said, I've spent 22 years on death row in the United States for a crime I didn't commit. I'm sitting here and I feel overwhelmed and emotional because when I was on death row, I had no idea that there were people out here who cared about people being on death row. I had no idea. So this is very emotional for me. I'm sorry. I can't tell you what it means to somebody, sitting in isolation and feeling like no one out there cares, what it's like to see all these people from all over the world who are trying to end the death penalty. Don't stop. And it's very encouraging to know that the young people are interested in it. And it makes my heart happy to know that the young people don't want this. So I am involved with an organization called Witness to Innocence, and we do a lot of advocacy work, and so far, I don't know how many states, but we're trying to abolish the death penalty in the United States, state by state. We've been successful, so hopefully the United States will one day be death penalty free. Without the help or support from the European Commission and the United Nations, we wouldn't be able to do this work. So we just thank everybody who supports us in trying to get rid of this barbaric type of punishment. So thank you, and don't stop. Don't stop.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for this powerful testimony. And just also to acknowledge that there are more than 20 other former death row inmates here with us in this Congress. So let's acknowledge them as well. Could you please rise wherever you are, those former death row inmates? Thank you. Thank you for being here. And with that, we will continue the conversation. So I'll invite the next guests for our second panel, and then I will also introduce what the discussion is going to be about. I would like to welcome Haja Labib, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Affairs and Foreign Trade and Federal Cultural Institutions of the Kingdom of Belgium. Welcome. Also coming to the stage, Titus Mvalo, Minister of Justice for the Republic of Malawi. Muzaffar Ashurian, Minister of Justice from the Republic of Tajikistan. Welcome. Last but not least, Eamon Gilmore, the Special Representative for the EU for Human Rights. Welcome. You need a headset? Okay. Your spare one, thank you. Channel 1, yes. Excellent. So, turning to you, Madam Minister, Belgium was elected to the UN Human Rights Council and also will be taking over the EU presidency in 2024. How are you using these avenues, these platforms, to strengthen the cause? And how has the World Congress helped in your work?
I use it very well, believe me. Thank you very much. First of all, I will speak French, if you don't mind. Je voudrais dire à quel point je suis émue depuis le début de cette cérémonie, heureuse d'être ici, d'avoir l'occasion d'entendre ces témoignages, cette musique aussi qui nous rappelle que si l'être humain est capable du pire, il est aussi capable du meilleur, l'harmonie, le pardon. Voilà, merci beaucoup pour l'organisation de cet événement. Effectivement,
thank you so much for organizing this Congress, and the fight against the death penalty is one of the main priorities on which Belgium has been working at. We believe that the death penalty is an unacceptable violation of human dignity, and we defend the abolition because we know that that's a long way and we want to do our very best. And the last death penalty was applied in 1863, so that's a long time. And in 19 we are president of the European Union, and we will do our best to fight against death penalty, and we want a maximum of transparency where it is still applied. And also another appointment, very, very important. Every year we fight against the death penalty at the Human Rights Council, and we are going to fight against its abolition. And together with partner countries, we had the last resolution from September 2021 against death penalty. It focused on the irreversibility of the death penalty, and we want the abolition to be irreversible. And when it comes to death penalty related to drug-related offenses, and also this ban is irreversible itself. So, as my colleague said it so well, Annalena Baerbock stressed the fact that this penalty is irreversible, whereas error is human. And I'm so happy they're convicted here who are still in life and who can witness of death row. And also, at a high-level panel discussion will be held at the next Council session in February 2023, focusing on human rights violations, and in particular the issue of limiting the death penalty to the most serious crimes. Also, we are of those who want the definitive abandonment of the death penalty, and also for the ratification of this optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The importance of this protocol is that it ensures a definitive abandonment by states, parties, and that's a way of no return, whatever the changes of governments and so on will be. Those who ratified this moratorium, signed by 90 countries, have ratified the protocol. That's very encouraging today. So there's progress. It's a long way, and we need to be in partnership with civil society. And we have to reaffirm our active support of the adoption of the resolution for a moratorium of the death penalty. The vote took place last week on a moratorium. 127 countries voted in favor, and we will re-vote in December in the plenary assembly, and I hope that we have at least as much countries who will vote in favor of the abolition of the death penalty. And this resolution will be signed, and we vote against the amendment on the sovereignty, as the right to life is a universal right. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Madam Minister. And talking about a long way, Belgium has been at the forefront of these efforts and is also one of the major backers of these Congress as well. To our Honorable Minister from Malawi, Mr. Titus Mvalo. We've seen a bit of back and forth in Malawi. We've seen the Supreme Court, first of all, rule that the death penalty is unconstitutional and in violation of the right to life, and then reverse that ruling. But obviously, we can look at, on the bright side, that your country has not applied the capital punishment since 1994. So at present, where does Malawi stand? Where is Malawi going with this? Particularly from your government standpoint.
Thank you. Thank you very much, moderator. Yes, you're right. There was a Supreme Court judgment, and then there was a reversal, not a reversal, but a disagreement with part of the judgment. And what happened is that there was the Supreme Court sits as a panel of 7, 9, or any odd number from 7 up to 13. So that was a panel of 7 judges. And what they did is, having agreed on the decision, they assigned one of them to write the judgment. But when he wrote judgment, what came out was not quite what was agreed. So when the other judges saw the judgment, they said, no, we didn't agree it this way. What was agreed was that it is unconstitutional to have death penalty as a mandatory punishment. And so the key word was mandatory punishment. which is still the case. If you read the Penal Code of Malawi, it says, upon conviction for an offense attracting death penalty, the convict may be sentenced to life or to death. So it's an death or life, either or. But a lot has happened since then. We regard ourselves as a very progressive democracy on the African continent. We have, I think, maybe the best constitution, I would say. Maybe I'm marketing for my country, but I think our constitution is I think, about the best in Africa. But we still find it a little disturbing, and we think that some provisions, particularly Section 16 of the Constitution, we think it soils our democracy a little bit because it guarantees the right to life to every person. But in the proviso, it says provided that. So it says in all, it says that no person shall be deprived of his or her life arbitrarily, provided, and that's what the problem is. It says provided that a life lost in execution by the state of a death sentence shall not be regarded as deprivation of life arbitrarily. Now that is a problem. It obviously is a contradiction, because what it says effectively is that nobody has a right to take away anybody's life except the state has that right. Now we find that to be a problem. So as Minister of Justice, we are, at the moment, we had a parliamentary committee. You know, Parliament has got committees. One of them is Legal Affairs Committee. So it went round to obtain views countrywide of people's views on retention or removal of death penalty. And the overwhelming majority said, no, death penalty must go. So when they reported to Parliament, Parliament also adopted that same view, but subject to further consultations. And that's where now a problem arose. When they went back to reconsult, again, they came back with the same view that people were saying, 95% were saying death penalty must go. But this time, Parliament did not accept it. Somehow the report was rejected. But in terms of our laws, that rejection does not amount to a prohibition from bringing a bill to remove the death penalty. And right now, we are working, obviously, with many partners, both local and international. And as a member of the UN Human Rights Council, Malawi would like to take the lead. We have seen countries in Africa that have abolished death penalty recently, which are clearly dictatorial countries, and we feel that they cannot do better than us. So we would like to take a lead in abolishing the death penalty. So because of that, we have had, in July this year, we had 25 people on the death row. But our president, Dr. Lazarus Magatha Chakwera, commuted all those sentences to life. Well, he commuted 22, not 25. But the reason was not because the other three were extreme, but it was because the prison authorities, through sheer inadvertence, omitted to submit the other three names. And we think that when they submitted, they too will have their sentences commuted to life. And as Minister of Justice, I have given a policy direction that no state prosecutor must anymore pray or ask for a death penalty in court. So all our prosecutors now are only asking for the most life imprisonment. But I realize that policy is not enough because the sentencing powers still remain with the judge. the judge can use his discretionary powers to still impose the death penalty because the law allows him. It's in the penal code. So, okay, yeah. So right now, as I round up, I want to say that I want to supervise the drafting of a bill for death sentence abolition to bring it to Parliament in the next sitting, which will be from February to March. So that is our current step, that we want to draft a bill for abolition of the death sentence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. As you've indicated, quite a lot going on, quite complicated as well, but also we're a bit short of time, so we'll have to keep our contributions limited. So to Tajikistan, it's the only country at the moment in Central Asia that has not yet abolished the death penalty. However, we've seen recent developments that have favored abolition in the country, including the support for the UN General Assembly resolution on the moratorium on the use of death penalty. Now, from the Justice Minister, what are the next steps for abolition in Tajikistan?
Уважаемые участники Конгресса, дамы и господа, после приобретения государственной независимости...
Dear Congress participants, since we have gained independence, Tajikistan has gradually implemented a policy of humanization of the penal code. In the Penal Code of 1961, with its 50 reasons for punishment, the death penalty was also included. In 1998, a penal code was adopted where the causes for death penalty were reduced to 15. On the 30th April of 2004, the president of the country, Emomali Rahman, adopted the principle of humanism and declared a moratorium for the death penalty. The moratorium that came into effect when it was promulgated is unlimited in terms of time and will continue for an unlimited period of time. The moratorium applies both to individuals that were convicted before the 30th April 2004 and for individuals who were convicted after this date on the basis of a capital crime. In the first case, the penalty was converted to 25 years of imprisonment in the second case as well. With the introduction of a moratorium for the death penalty, the penal code was amended. With the law of 17th May of 2004, the number of crimes that were subject to capital punishment was reduced to 5. And in particular, the law of the 15th July 2004 abolished the death penalty for the above-mentioned crimes, suspended the death penalty. With resolution, with a presidential decree of the 9th April 2010, a work group was set up to prepare a study on the status of crime before and after the moratorium for the death penalty, and legal aspects of a potential abolition of the death penalty were to be investigated. The working group is composed of the heads of the responsible ministries and the ombudspersons of human rights, as well as scientists. The working group developed an action plan that included the international practice and the international situation of countries that have abolished the death penalty, a sociological study on the abolishment and consideration for the ratification of the second optional protocol on the International Pact on Civil and Political Rights. With a presidential decree of the 3rd April in 2013, another work group was set up for the preparation of a new penal code that also addressed issues of the abolition of the death penalty. The same recommendation was also issued by other contracting bodies of the United States after examination of the respective national reports. It should be mentioned that the legislation of our country provides for the following: the prohibition of death penalty for pregnant women and individuals with mental and intellectual disabilities, as well as restriction of the list of crimes that can be subject to death penalty, as well as the application of this form of punishment as an alternative punishment, and further issues of granting and pardons. Furthermore, it should also be underlined that our legal provisions prohibit the death penalty against all women and men who are 63 years and above. Dear participants of the Congress, please note that the decision for the abolition of the death penalty considers social and economic aspect. The social aspect is the degree of willingness of the Tajik population for the abolishment of the death penalty. Sociological studies do not show a clear attitudes of the people of our republics for the abolishment of the death penalty for these crimes. A study conducted by NGOs and the Swiss Office for Cooperation showed that more than 73% of those polled are of the opinion that the penalties imposed, more than 73% of the population voted for retaining the death penalty. 6 years later, in 2010, after the promulgation of the moratorium, according to official statistics, 60% of the Tajik citizens were already against the abolition. Only 60% were against the abolition of the death penalty. This shows that the introduction of the moratorium for the abolishment of the death penalty is not supported by the majority of the population. One reason being the unstable security situation and the rise of terrorist groups in neighboring Afghanistan, with which we share a border of 1,444 kilometers. It is also important to understand people whose relatives were victims of terrorists, rapists, and murderers, and therefore we consider it to be important to address both the legal aspects and the social and economic awareness of the population in order to create a positive attitude towards this phenomenon. Another important aspect is the lack of an institution that enables the accommodation of inmates with life sentences. At present, these prisoners are accommodated in the normal law enforcement and detention institutions. Regarding the economic aspects, we do not have any prisons for persons who are convicted to life sentences. We already provided one property for the construction of such a facility, and the construction of special fences have started and cost estimates are currently developed. Dear ladies and gentlemen, as already said, we are planning to continue the work in the work group as mentioned and to develop a mechanism in order to address questions in conjunction with the abolition of the death penalty. We are planning to involve representatives of civil societies and international experts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So clearly a lot of work still to be done. That's why we have a lot of advocates here, a lot of people lobbying, and a lot of people getting into these discussions because these are not just legal, they're not just to do with Parliament, but also to do with public sentiment, and that's presents shapes the size of the amount of work before you. I will turn to Eamon Gilmore, the EU Special Representative for Human Rights. Now, the EU is one of the main donors to support worldwide fight against the death penalty. The European Union has co-sponsored these World Congresses since 2019. What role would you say international organizations play in this fight? And of course, what are the effective actions? How are you working with, for example, the civil society? We've got many of them here. So could you give us a picture of that?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation, and to the organisers for having us here. Let me start by saying that the European Union is opposed to the death penalty in all and every circumstances. No exceptions, no exemptions. And we are because it is an affront to human dignity, because it doesn't work in terms of reducing crime and being a deterrent. It does not effectively combat terrorism and other issues, and of course it's irreversible. The abolition of the death penalty is a fundamental part of the European Union's foreign and security policy. It's reflected in our action plan on human rights and democracy, which is our guidebook, and we promote it in the international fora. You ask, what is the role of the international community in the international fora? I think we saw it last week when we saw the resolution at the Third Committee of the United Nations, 127 countries voting in favour. I think the last time that resolution went to the Third Committee, it was 122. So we are gradually seeing more countries in favour of a moratorium and fewer countries actually carrying out executions. We're seeing progress. But in addition to the United Nations, we also work with the Council of Europe on the World Death Penalty, World Day Against the Death Penalty. We do a joint statement with the Council of Europe. We also work with the OSCE and other, and also regional organisations, the African Union, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, the Inter-American Commission, ASEAN. We work with all of those. What do we do specifically? We have a set of guidelines. Now, this is not just a document. This is a blueprint, if you like, for how our own delegations, European Union delegations in over 140 countries, works together with the embassies of our member states in promoting our opposition to the death penalty. And that means, for example, that in individual countries, we go in on démarches and we talk with governments, we raise particular cases, sometimes make public statements and use our diplomatic channels in that way. We also use our trade mechanisms. In our trade preferences, this scheme which allows access to the European market, we use that to encourage not just ratification of the second protocol of the ICCPR, but also its implementation. In the work that I do, for example, which is essentially talking with governments about human rights, if I can give some examples of even in the last couple of months, I was in Indonesia, where I was interested to hear about the plans that they have to introduce a pause on the carrying out of executions for a period of 10 years. In Egypt, I talked with the government about reducing the number of penalties to which the death penalty applies. In the United States, we talked with our friends about the abolition of the death penalty. In Saudi Arabia, we talked about not executing minors, and also not using it for drug-related offences. And I must say, I deplore the execution last week of 3 people for drug-related offences in that country. In addition to what we do in that forum, we also work very closely with civil society. We are a co-sponsor, for example, of this event. We also co-sponsored it in 2019. We also provide funding for civil society through our global funding mechanisms. We're currently supporting projects in 21 different countries, some of which is about training of judges, some of which is about advocacy, all of it promoting the abolition of the death penalty. And we approach that in a way which is a way which we intend to be helpful. Let me just say this to you, because I've listened in particular to the minister from Malawi and Tajikistan. I was a member of the national parliament of my country, Ireland, when we abolished the death penalty in law. It was only 30 years ago. And I've heard the arguments of deterrence. It was during a period when we had a terrorist problem in our country. I've heard the arguments and have been through all of these. And I think that there are many ways in which we can help each other to overcome the obstacles and difficulties in either introducing a moratorium or in legal abolition of the death penalty in different countries. And the European Union is certainly willing to do that. Final point to Deborah and to the other survivors death row who are here in our audience. Deborah made a plea to us, don't stop. And I want to say back to her, until the death penalty is abolished, we will not stop.
That's powerful. Thank you, distinguished guests. As we said, so much work to do, but also so much room for collaboration based on what we've heard here. Different countries have been through different experiences, different histories, but that's why we're here, to hear from each other, to talk to each other, and to see how we can move forward. Thank you very much to my panelists. Thank you. Thank you, distinguished guests. And with that, I would like to turn back to our host country, Federal Republic of Germany, with the Minister of Justice, Marco Buschmann, who is going to address us.
Esteemed colleagues, Madam Secretary General, Ms. Niakate, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to have you all come to Berlin for this important Congress. The topic is a matter of great concern to me, both as a Federal Minister of Justice and on a personal level. In my capacity as Minister, I follow in the footsteps of the very first Justice Minister of the Federal Republic of Germany. Thomas Dehler robustly opposed every effort to restore the death penalty. And it is perhaps a matter of concern to me personally because 1977, the year of my birth, in the midst of the terrorist atrocities of the Red Army faction, was the last time that serious discussions on bringing back the death penalty were held in Germany. Among those who resisted was a young politician by the name of Gerd Baum, whom just a few days ago I had the privilege of congratulating on his 90th birthday. For me, the matter has always been clear. The abolition of the death penalty is enshrined in Germany's constitution, and rightly so. That must never change. For centuries, some of the most eminent minds have argued about the death penalty. Nevertheless, the issue remains as topical as ever for the same reason that the death penalty still exists. Neither has it lost any of its urgency. Last year, for the first time in many years, more death sentences were imposed and more executions carried out than in the year before. This cannot leave us indifferent. We must not rest as long as even a single state in the world continues to practice the death penalty. As long as even a single person is executed, we must not rest. The death penalty is unjust. That is why it must be abolished without exception in every corner of the globe. This is the message that we are here today to send to the world, and we will continue to do so until the death penalty is a thing of the past, ladies and gentlemen. We are not here to discuss the arguments for and against the death penalty. There is no argument for it that could possibly outweigh those against. The death penalty is irreversible. The risk of a miscarriage of justice is therefore simply too great. It has never been proven that the death penalty has any additional deterrent effect. And so, the mere claim that it increases safety rests on shaky ground. When a person's life is at stake, however, even the slightest doubt should be enough to spare it. In case of doubt, one does not stand on the side of death. we stand on the side of life, ladies and gentlemen. In the unprecedented global... Thank you. In the unprecedented global situation we find ourselves in, there is a particular aspect that I would like to highlight today. We live in a time in which the threat to democracy and the desire to strengthen it are on everyone's lips. And so I would like to address the relationship between democracy and death penalty. Yes, there are democracies that impose the death penalty, but there should not be. The death penalty is alien to democracy. My first argument for this is as follows. The death penalty is alien to democracy because it lays claim to something that is utterly incompatible with democracy. It lays claim to infallibility. Democracy always makes allowance for error. Democracy knows that every decision is a work of human beings. Democracy is not a revelation of absolute reason, as Marxism-Leninism claims to be. It is not the consummation of divine will, as theocracies claim to be. Democracy is nothing more and nothing less than the attempt by human beings to organize a common existence in respect for one another and with freedom for all. But every human endeavor is prone to error. This means that democracy is a process of trial and error. Democracy is constant error correction. A government that promises much but delivers little will be replaced at the next election. Legislation is changed as a result of parliamentary debates. Legislation is changed for any new argument. Strong public criticism prompts politicians to change their stance and reverse their decisions. A political party can today declare to be right what it only yesterday held to be wrong because it acknowledged a mistake. The death penalty, however, leaves no margin for error. It brooks no uncertainty. Those who impose the death penalty must have absolute confidence in the judgment on which it is based. They must be convinced it is the consummation either of absolute reason or of divine will. So it is hardly surprising that the death penalty is overwhelmingly used by autocracies and theocracies. But if we accept that democracy is a process of trial and error, then we must also accept that the death penalty, the very epitome of irreversibility, is alien to democracy. There is a second argument I would like to put forward. Democracy means that we are all part of the state, but the state is limited in what it can or cannot do. If democracy is to retain its vitality and resist simply becoming liturgical dogma, then the state, even if it represents a democratic majority, may not, for instance, deny the minority its opinion or forbid it from expressing that opinion, from publishing it, from taking to the streets for it, and from standing for election. The only exception is when that opinion seeks to overthrow democracy itself. Today, the idea of limits to the power of a democratically legitimate state is often associated with the notion of liberal democracy. What we mean by this is that the power exercised by democracy is limited by the fundamental rights arising from the liberal tradition. In fact, however, there can be no democracy in the modern sense of the term without these limits. What is the use of an election if it was not preceded by open debate? If the arguments of the opposition were suppressed, if candidates belonging to a minority were not allowed to stand, democracy is either liberal democracy or no democracy at all. The idea of illiberal democracy is a contradiction in terms. And so, if the state should not even have the power to deny a person their own opinion, their own political will, should it then have the right to take away their life? The question is a rhetorical one. The answer is clear. If we have no right to deny a person their voice, then neither do we have the right to silence them forever. And that is why the death penalty is alien to democracy. I would therefore like to end my speech with these words. A strong state has no use for the death penalty. A strong democracy must have no need for death penalty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you. I would like to just turn to everybody right now and think of a word. No, this is not a magic trick. Think of a word that describes how you feel about this cause. Think of a word. You don't have to say it out. Just think. Write it down if possible, if you've got it. That expresses how you feel about this cause. Do you have it? Do you have it? We'll get back to that word later. After this panel, our third panel, and if possible, I would like everybody to, can I disturb you a little bit? Can we stand up? Can everybody stand up, please? Just stand up. All right? It's just to jolt you, just to get you out of your seats. You may sit down now. This is just to make everybody wake up. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'd like to invite our next panel, our final panel. So fear not, fear not. It's the final one. I know there's a lot to talk about. No, please don't leave. No, please. Remain where you are. We're nearly done. Our third panel. Maria Pecinovich-Buric, my apologies. She is the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Albert Fabrice Puela, Minister of Human Rights from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Bienvenue. Bienvenue. Simon Geisbühler, the Deputy Secretary of State from the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Swiss Confederation. And last but not least, Amina Bouayat, President of the Moroccan National Human Rights Council and member of the Academic Committee of this, the 8th World Congress. Welcome. Welcome to you. So let's begin with you, Madam Buric. The abolition of the death penalty has been key for the Council of Europe. For decades, we've been trying to fight for abolition on the continent. At present, given the context, what challenges do you face at the moment in Europe to achieving this? And what can European states do beyond, okay, fine, when we got to abolition, what do we do next?
Je commence en français.
D'accord.
Alors, les 46 pays
I'm going to start in English. Our Council of Europe is luckily without death penalty, and that's not something which would just occur without reasons. And we prohibit death penalty in our Council of Europe. And that's why we have a space revendique un espace without death penalty. And it was already said today, but I would like to insist, death penalty is irreversible per definition, and there can be irreparable errors. Of course, the jury, the judges can be wrong. And the Court of Strasbourg was the first international instance to acknowledge that the conditions in the death row are bad treatment, and these conditions will create physical damage for those who are on death row, psychological stress, and also many other unacceptable things. So there are two protocols at the European Commission of Human Rights who were added. The first is the protocol number 6 to the convention, which abolishes the death penalty in times of peace. And we added another protocol which abolishes death penalty, whatever the circumstances are, which is very important. And I believe that from our point of view, this is true for our 46 members. Even in Europe, the situation is not perfect at all. And for example, when it comes to Belarus, this is a country which never joined the Council of Europe because it continues applying death penalties, and also the Russian Federation threatened to do the same, and after its exclusion from the Council of Europe after the aggression towards Ukraine. And this aggression is ongoing. No, Russia is not part of the European Convention anymore today. This menace is still acute. And during summer, there were several death convictions in the region of Donbass, which is occupied by Russia, the Ukrainian region. Unfortunately, this death penalty was not applied as the competent person left, and the responsible person left and was exchanged. So we need change and the abolition of death penalty. The death penalty should never, never, never be applied. And I know
will do the same. I particularly welcome the fact that this World Forum has included, World Congress has included the abolition, to make abolition irreversible, because I think that's the case, not only to attend the moment where it is abolished by law, but it cannot be worked a different direction. However, I think even in the societies which have already abolished the capital punishment, we should never stop informing public why this was important and why it was the right thing to do. Because nothing should be taken for granted. I think we can witness that lately with a lot of backsliding of democracy, extreme populism and nationalism. So this is certainly one thing we should bear in mind, and we should all continue working on. I think that Council of Europe is clear that not only we did what we needed, but we should go further still. So we should go also among our member states, but also beyond the borders of the continent. So, it is not enough only to abolish the death penalty, but take measures to enable it elsewhere. And we did it last year by the decision of the Committee of Ministers to vote on measures against the trade in goods used for the death penalty. That is a very important point. It certainly has its place in a bigger framework, sits along the EU anti-torture regulation and gives actually effect to a number of UN General Assembly. So certainly we are proud to work together with others, and we are proud to be standard bearer in Europe and elsewhere. And we believe that progress would require activism, and I think that's what we see here, and awareness, which also we're doing with this, and the tools and structures that enable that change. And I think this World Congress is central to generating this momentum. In this, you will have a partner and ally in the Council of Europe, and we are proud to do all we can in political and practical support that we can give to anyone, including our new compendium on case law of the Strasbourg Court on the death penalty, because our firm stance is that that is not justice, that capital punishment replaces justice by revenge, and that this is all work and it needs to be stopped. So this World Congress is an important opportunity to raise awareness, to chart the next moves, and I think this is the fight that we are winning step by step. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. We're a bit pressed for time, so we'll try and speed through the remaining contributions. So turning to the Democratic Republic of Congo, Monsieur Fuela, your country backed the moratorium in 2003, but you were not present at the vote on Friday. There's another moratorium vote in December. Would we expect the DRC to be there? Would you expect a vote in favor?
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. I would prefer to speak in French, my national language. Je tiens à remercier les organisateurs.
Thanks to all those who organized this Congress on abolishing death penalty, and the President of our Republic sends us your best wishes, as well as the Cabinet. Our President is convinced of the importance of human rights. And when RDC, with our laws and our constitution, we stress the importance of human rights. And we analyzed the question, and the result is that most states who voted in favor of the abolition live in peace, or in a relative peaceful situation, which is not our case in RDC. Far from that, unfortunately. Since 3 decades, we live in a very difficult situation, in turmoil and in war, in aggression imposed on by neighboring countries like Rwanda. And this is very, very difficult for us. Of course, life is sacred, and we know this. And we accept that capital punishment does not correct the convict, and it's irreversible once this penalty is applied. But also, it's true that there is a problem of impetus. When do you have to declare? When do you have to abolish death penalty amidst of a big crisis? And that's a message to all those who to massacre our population. We ratified the Covenant on Social and Political Rights in '76, but not the second optional protocol on the abolition of the death penalty. That's true. That's true. And maybe you think it's not relevant, and you may think so, but since 2003, there is a moratorium in our RDC. Our republic must defend itself, must defend its frontiers. And unfortunately, since some years, there's an embargo imposed on our country which makes it impossible to get weapons in order to defend ourselves. And our population is scarred and bruised. We don't want to give death. We just want to defend ourselves. And we need to defend ourselves. There are countries which are very aggressive towards us. Of course, the international law stipulates the right to life. But why can't we be supported as well as the Ukrainians? There are millions of us who are under threat. And stop death penalty today would give the wrong message to our aggressors. And as it was said by my colleague, Minister of Justice from Germany, we have to eliminate death penalty. But when? And confronted with this difficult situation, the abolition of death penalty is difficult. And I don't want to give carte blanche to all these war criminals and their aggressive acts towards us. And we can't just imprison them. That's not enough. And in our prisons, security measures are not always enough. We have amnesties, we have presidential grace. So I don't think we can abolish death penalty right now in order to defend our population and our territory. And in this context, we have difficulties to accelerate the process towards the abolition. The international community is called upon to help us to stop the embargo and to condemn those who invade and overrun the RDC. There's a great revolution. There is a moratorium, and there's even a big debate among the new bill which was submitted to Parliament. So in the months to come, the RDC will do its very best to abolish death penalty. And we are convinced that with the support of the international community, with all the challenges we have to face and the inviolability of our Constitution, I would like to state, by way of conclusion, that our ministers and our president encourage all the initiatives to change the penal code of Congo in order to guarantee the inviolability of life and the restoration of peace in our whole territory remains absolutely imperative before we can abolish death penalty. Thank you.
Focus, and maybe I might have got the translations, missed something there, but I think we're trying to focus more on the actual judicial aspect of things. I know there's issues with Rwanda and all of that. That's separate. I think what we have today is the main focus, like has been said here, on the actual legislation and what the courts hand out in terms of the death penalty. Swiftly moving on to Switzerland, we are fast running out of time. And so I would need everybody to please speed up, shorten, in fact, put the script aside and let's just have a very brief conversation. And turning to Switzerland, to Mr. Geisbuller, why does the abolition remain such a priority for Switzerland? And what are the ongoing sort of multilateral commitments?
Thank you so much for having me on this panel and for the question, Tommy. I will be as brief as possible. The fight against the death penalty is and will remain a priority of Swiss foreign policy until capital punishment is abolished universally. Switzerland opposes the death penalty everywhere and under all circumstances. For a simple reason, the death penalty violates the most basic human right, the right to life. This understanding is shared by an ever-growing number of countries around the world. Today, more than 2/3 of all states are abolitionist, either in law or practice. This year alone, Papua New Guinea, Kazakhstan, Equatorial New Guinea, and the Central African Republic have all abolished capital punishment. And we got very encouraging news today from Liberia, Zambia, Sierra Leone, and others. At a time of growing pressure on human rights across the globe, of authoritarian resurgence, and the Russian war against Ukraine, with all its devastating consequences, these milestones should not go unnoticed. We congratulate these countries for their historic achievements. But there is no reason to be complacent. Significant setbacks have also been recently observed in Myanmar, Belarus, and Iran. Allow me here to briefly thank the Minister of Germany, Minister Baerbock, and Germany for their clear words and their concrete action when it comes to recent developments in Iran. The global trend towards abolition is not self-sufficient. It needs to be sustained through collective action. This is best illustrated by our engagement with our partners on the multilateral level. Last Friday, it has been said before, the resolution calling for the establishment of a universal moratorium on the use of the death penalty was adopted by 126 states at the Third Committee in New York. This is the most important support ever given to this initiative. Without the joint efforts of abolitionist states and civil society, of all of you, this result would not have been possible. Switzerland plays an important role in these UN initiatives, besides the moratorium resolution, where we were actively involved in the negotiations. We also present every 2 years a resolution on the death penalty at the Human Rights Council in Geneva. The aim of this resolution is to maintain a debate about different human rights violations and violations of international law that are linked to the use of the death penalty. However, retentionist states do not sit idly by. An amendment proclaiming a sovereign right of countries to determine appropriate penalties has once again been incorporated into the moratorium resolution. It is disturbing to note that this amendment has gathered the support of countries who have either abolished the death penalty or have established a moratorium on its use. Our position on this question is crystal clear. The death penalty is a human rights issue and not an issue of domestic criminal law. It is therefore only logical that the international community pays attention to it. We firmly oppose the idea that sovereignty takes precedence over universal human rights. It is not just a matter of principle. The current language on sovereignty could also have concrete implications. The perception of the death penalty as an issue of domestic criminal law would weaken the international framework and would make setbacks more likely. Against this background, I can assure you that Switzerland remains committed to strengthening the international framework and to contributing to a world free of the death penalty. We warmly encourage the participants of this Congress to come up with concrete ideas as how we can together advance the implementation of our common agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, to Amina Bouayash, you sort of make the link between the political side of things and the civil society. And looking at the statements, don't worry, the microphone's on, we've heard, what should we expect over the next 4 days as these discussions continue? Don't worry, your microphone's on, so just speak.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I will switch in French.
I'm going to express myself in France. This morning we had the honor to listen to the declarations and speeches of different delegates, politic delegates, with some witnesses also who survived death row. And from this morning, I would like to talk about the fight of civil society. Civil society knows how important this fight is, and we need to hear the voice of this civil society. And it is so important to stop legal killing by some different shady zones of revenge. So we need to guarantee the right to life. This is an absolute right and can't be replaced by anything. And we need civil society and all the stakeholders who are involved in the fight for abolition. And in order to go on towards abolition, we need techniques, we need tools, we need strategies, judicial and cultural tools, politic tools, holistic and pluridimensional. And we were listening to some of those who are opposed to abolition. We need good arguments, and we need to accompany the political players and to guide them beyond hesitation and fear. We need to help them to be brave and humane. by parliamentary votes and the abolition. And it's in this spirit that we were preparing this 80th World Congress against death penalty in our academic committee, where I had the honor to take part with some of my colleagues who are present here and who are abolitionists from different continents. So it's about, ladies and gentlemen, it's about define strategic priorities in order to get on with our mobilization, to share the abolitional processes, to coordinate actions and advocacy in order to support the different stakeholders in their regions by giving them a practical tool set. I congratulate ECPM for the choice of members of the committee, be it lawyers, activists, researchers, with all their know-how and their commitment. And we need all of them in order to fight for the abolition of the death penalty. The academic program, diversified with all the stakeholders, will adopt an attitude with strategic and practical impact, giving you all good arguments to abolish death penalty. We need judicial arguments, cultural arguments, in order to accompany political players and members of parliaments. We have been debating a lot in a constructive way, based on a participative methodology. For all of you to appropriate this academic program, thanks to ECPM, thanks to the Worldwide Coalition, thanks to all the organizations for human rights, all the personalities, journalists, lawyers, researchers who helped us planning this Congress and its theoretical and academic basis. It is a program with 15 topics validated by 8 experts, 8 independent experts of the academic committee, in order to give our fight an international, regional, and national dimension. We are convinced that every day we are determined to resist to all kinds of political power plays. We are determined to consolidate our fight against death penalty, fortified by our common commitment. Our 80th Congress, dear friends, dear colleagues, is a Congress against death penalty. And we are proud to be a universal movement for the protection of the first human right, the right to live. Thanks for your attention.
Distinguished guests, please appreciate our panelists. Thank you very much. And we will conclude on a musical note. I'll just pass this on to Valentin van der.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. And sorry for my English by advance. I just would like to present some video to conclude this morning. And just to some word that will be very, very short. 6 months ago, Sarah Ajar from ECPM asked me to compose a kind of remote symphony with the tune of John Baez and Ennio Morricone, Here's to You. remote symphony because it brings together a lot of anti-death penalty all over the world who are playing music together without being together by the magic of internet. And when I said yes, I didn't know, didn't expect that this video will be shown in the prestigious Pierre Boulez Saal in front of delegation of all over the world after beautifully Mozart pieces and brilliant speeches. But anyway, I can handle the stress very well. The video you're about to see is brings together 40 participants from some 20 countries. Some of them are here today, others couldn't come, but I would like to thank them all for their participation, and especially Sarah Ajar, who helped me very well to find this musician and create this video. So thank you at all. And each one, among them there are musicians, there are singers, professionals or not, with good equipment or not, but each one spoke from where they were and as they could, only to create militant and collective work. And each one sent to me their participation without knowing what others had done, and my role consists to receiving, assembling, and cutting all these pieces. So to repeat the sentence of Mozart quote by Raphael in the beginning, music is putting together notes that love each other. Here we put together a note that love each other and didn't know it. So to finish, I would like just to dedicate this modest but vibrant creation to all of you and all people who are fighting against death penalty in the world, and of course to all the victims of death penalty. Here's to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's to you. Now, this is not a mournful song. This is not a dirge. This is a rallying cry. The lyrics go, here's to you, Nicola and Bart. Rest forever here in our hearts. The last and final moment is yours. The agony is your triumph. As we hear it, you might be able to catch on, sing, join in, hum, tap your foot, whatever you want to do. The song was composed in remembering Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, who were condemned to death and executed in 1927 on wrongful convictions. This was by the famous singer Joan Baez and the composer Ennio Morricone. So here's to you.
Це життя, це кожен подих серцебиття.
Der letzte Augenblick gehört euch, denn dieser Schmerz ist ein Triumph.
Here's to you, Nicola and Bart. Rest forever in our hearts. The last and final moment is yours. That irony is your triumph.
Siempre estarán en mi hogar.
Overwin de pijn, de zege
Thank you very much. Now the Congress continue at the radial system this afternoon and the days tomorrow, Thursday and Friday for the closing ceremony. I invite you to spread the words of the abolition, and I'm happy, so happy, to declare the 8th Congress against the death penalty open. Thank you.